Did you know Higher Ed's premier tech conference, Ellucian Live, is almost here? Join industry leaders in New Orleans, March 26th through 29th. Discover insights and game-changing solutions to unlock possibility and drive student success. Register at elive.ellucian.com.
Epic.
3 higher ed authors, 100 plus college and university presidents, dozens of actionable insights for academic leaders. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, is now available on Amazon. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. Dr. Joe Salustio back with you again in another episode. As my guest today said, we're fast approaching 600. If you can believe it, I can't. Although I do this every day, so I figure they add up somewhere. They add up somewhere. They're going to a catalog somewhere. It's a great privilege to bring this guest back. It's not. I would love to actually bring guests back more often. And I'm not saying this to like toot our own horn, but we're booked out so far. Sometimes it's hard to get people on aligned schedules to get them back and do it in such a way that we can, I don't know, really celebrate that work and check in with people more often. And then they get busy and we meet with these other people, and all of a sudden time goes by. In fact, in this instance, almost 3 years, if you can believe it. This person that we're meeting with today is also quoted in my book that I wrote with Kate Colbert called Commencement, the Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education, a handful of times. And whenever I can have one of the presidents that informed the book that we think is a game changer for higher education on this podcast to lay it on us again, it's a huge, huge honor. And it's also an honor to bring on my guest co-host, because I've had him a couple of times, I think 2, in fact, which means this is his 3rd time, which means he gets the mug. Now I got to get his address, and I got to send him the EdUp mug that says co-host on it. Ladies and gentlemen, he wasn't a doctor last time he was on, but he is now. He's Dr. David Lind, and he's Director of International Programs at Syracuse University for the College of Professional Studies. David, welcome back.
Pleasure to be back.
Congratulations, getting that doctorate all sealed the deal, my friend. How do you feel?
Feels wonderful. Thank you.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does. It does. It feels good. And then you realize, okay, what do I do now with all my time? You start a podcast. So, we'll be looking forward to your podcast that you go start to fill all your time now, David. No, don't do that, because then I got to compete with you, and I don't want to compete with you. You're too smart. My guest, ladies and gentlemen, one of my favorite people in higher education, and I don't say that all the time, I promise. He is the Chancellor of Purdue University Global. He is Dr. Frank Dooley. Frank, welcome back.
Joe, great to be back with you. I just appreciate it. Where has time gone, right? I agree with you. And David, very nice to meet you, and I look forward to our time together. A lot to talk about, right?
Oh my gosh, isn't it? What a landscape what a time we live in now, the time of AI and Chat GPT, where 6 months ago, none of us were thinking about anything like that. But Frank, it's been almost 3 years, but like 2 years and 11 months or so since you were on the podcast at episode number 82. We're almost to 582, so it's been a while. What's going on at Purdue University Global? How is business? How are things? How are you? Tell me about the last 3 years, my friend.
Well, it's only 2.5, so I mean that just saved like an hour of the show, right?
Yeah, let's not age any of us on purpose, by the way.
Yeah, no, it continues to be amazing. I think we are doing so many great things that it's hard to boil it down. But we constantly remind ourselves we're here for students, and when you have the mission and the direction that you're trying to go, there's all kinds of things we need to do for our students and the population of students that we work with. But as a university, we I think are making important strides in raising student success. So we're seeing the outcomes that you're looking for. We've done more prior learning assessments, so we're trying to get more of that involved. We're a much deeper partner with Guild than we were the last time that we talked. We're deeply involved in an articulation pathway program at the community college in the state of Indiana known as Ivy Tech, which is the biggest one in the country, or one of the biggest ones. and it goes on and on and on. And I think the reason that happens, Joe, is, and I've heard it from some of your other guests, you have these amazing teams of people who come to you with amazing ideas. And then part of the role is to try to, how are we going to do that? Where does it fit in? Is it part of the goal? And the last thing I'll say is, Purdue University has a brand new president as of January 1st, Dr. Meng Cheng, and who took over for Mitch Daniels, and we're calling it the Daniels decade. And he really set Purdue on a pathway. We are fully part of that pathway. And I think probably the biggest change is the warm embrace by all of Purdue, that Purdue Global fits into that mission. And I can elaborate on as we go forward.
Amazing.
Well, I do want you to elaborate, because some of those changes that you're talking about, of course, those are my second and third questions that you just took away from me already, Frank, but you're already on a roll. No, seriously, when you go through you have a transformational president in Mitch Daniels, transformational president of Purdue University, does things that hadn't been done before, literally blazes a new trail. And then you have that decade end, and you have a new president come in, which, by the way, if you haven't seen Meng Cheng's background, it's pretty incredible. But you also had a little bit of a change, perhaps and you'll have to elaborate on this for me, but there was a little bit of a separateness of Purdue Global and Purdue University, at least from a marketing perspective. It looks like you have a little bit more alignment. Ethan Braden, who I'm connected with, I haven't actually spoken to him, but we know of each other, has taken over, it seems like, more of the umbrella type messaging. So there's the brand itself, even though there's two pieces, they're very connected. Has it been intentional? What result have you had from these changes? Have they been positive, negative? Are you working through? I mean, don't say none of them are negative, but are you working through them, or is it just business as usual, a rocket ship path kind of thing?
Well, the rocket ship is certainly the good analogy, and it's especially appropriate to Purdue. I mean, home of Neil Armstrong and Eugene Cernan, and something like 28 astronauts came through Purdue. So
thank you for making me seem smart.
It is. I would say, Joe, the important thing that you picked up, probably some of the biggest changes. When I started, I mean, the last time when we talked, I had been in the role for about 3 months.
Yep.
And when I got done with that, I kind of wrote myself, because you really set some questions in my mind for what do I need to be thinking about as I work with Mitch and the board. And I
did that for you?
You did. Thank you.
I am the smartest man alive.
Thank you.
And well, maybe in the top 10. So, but at the end of the day, I went back and I wrote basically a memo to myself and to Mitch. Mm-hmm. And I think every institution strives to be the best that you can be, to serve the students the best that you can, to have a faculty that feels they're part of the institution. And I basically said, here are the things we're going to need to work on to be stronger going forward. And among those was this notion that I think out of the gate, Purdue, I think you captured it, there was a distance between Purdue Global and Purdue. And one of my trustees about 18 months ago goes, but the first name in Purdue Global is Purdue. Well, if Purdue is going to put their name at the front of that, what does that mean? And Ethan Braden, who you mentioned, is probably one of the top chief marketing officers in all of higher ed. He is phenomenal, but he's a greater person than he is a marketer. Ethan and I sat down. He is my chief marketing officer, and so the embrace. The reason there is an embrace is there's several roles now that they serve West Lafayette and me, and we're thinking about strategies together. And in particular, Ethan Braden with marketing. You typically ask this question at the end, what's coming next? Well, I'm going to go jump to that question right now.
You're already jumping to my question, all over my questions, Frank. Keep going.
No, well, that's the nice thing about coming back. You can anticipate a little.
Yeah.
April 3rd, with Ethan's help, we're launching a new marketing strategy, a new brand. And the important thing of a brand is what a good brand is. It tells your story. And then it starts to tell, why do you matter? But it forces the institution to ask themselves a bunch of questions. And in particular, if you're a place like Purdue, who is known as a powerhouse research institution, but Purdue is one of the few institutions that, as an R1 AAU school, is also taken a deep interest in serving working adults. So that's what we're trying to grapple with. That's what we've been putting together. And I think a lot of the digital marketing, I spend a lot of time online and I get a lot of pop-ups. And, you're driving down the interstate. I would go towards Chicago or Indianapolis, and you get near any large metropolitan area and you see the billboards, right? Had an accident, call 1-800, sue me, right?
Nailed it.
But guess what? You go online and you look at digital ads, it's almost the same kind of a thing. It's the same kind of a notion of I'm affordable, I'm accessible. They're just, you could put anyone's logo on these ads and they just become somewhat of a commodity. We're going to switch. And there is a story to what Purdue means and what Purdue means to the country, what it means to individuals. There's a pride in it, Purdue. And now what we're doing is we're taking that and what does it mean for the working adults that are coming through Purdue?
Oh, yeah.
So there we go.
Well, I'll tell you again, David, before I pass it to you, it's amazing how great minds think alike. Of course, I'm putting myself in the same category as you, Frank, at least for this one moment, that literally I was on a podcast earlier today that I was a guest on for the book, not doing my thing, which I have to tell you, it's super hard to give the keys to somebody else at this point after doing this podcast for so long. But we were talking about how marketing in general, if you were marketing for a traditional brick and mortar institution, you used to have like the 3 in a tree, where you'd have 3 students, hopefully from a multicultural background, in a tree with some bricks behind you, and you would recycle that image all the time. And then when you went to online, it would be the adult student in front of a computer with somebody hanging on their leg, with somebody being a kid hanging on your leg, and you would recycle that image or an image like that. And it's like, where's the differentiation now? Because there is so much competition within higher ed, and not even just within institution to institution, other types of higher ed, of post-secondary education, siphoning off those that are susceptible to not believing in a degree pathway. I say susceptible because I think there is don't get me started on that part, but it's like, how do we as an institution now differentiate ourselves amongst everybody doing something that's fairly similar in its values and its mission and its brand and our story? And that's what the students buying now. They can buy online education from an institution outside the United States if they want to. Why do they want to buy it from Purdue University Global, Purdue University? It's because of that story. And I was literally just talking about that. So to hear you say something similar, it's like, okay, we really need to think about that as a industry. Like, we can't just be this recycled and students are going to go, yes, I still want to do this. We have to show you the value. Anyway, David, over to you, and let me transition, and then Frank, you can.
Now it's your turn.
So, Chancellor Dooley, Joe's going to hate me for this because I did the same thing the last time I appeared on the show. But on the topic of good stories, I was moved by something you said on a different podcast. You shared an anecdote about you shared an anecdote about a graduation ceremony at Purdue Global in which the young child of one of the graduates, shouted out, "That's my mama."
Yes.
People got all teared up. And to me, that speaks to the intangible value of getting a college degree later in life. And I was wondering if you could talk about that feeling of being a role model that Purdue Global students feel, and lifelong learners in general.
Well, David, I mean, you really, you touched a warm spot in my heart. I actually have another graduation about 2 weeks from today. And graduations, especially for a fully online institution, have a special meaning. And in part because, you might have been in the classroom with these individuals for the last couple of years. And, so I know who David is, I know who Joe is, but I've never been in a room with them. And of course, pandemic meant we weren't doing graduations, but we brought them back. And we're doing a couple things that I think I really love. You know what my graduation speakers are? Students who graduated within the last couple terms.
That's meaning right there.
And well, and what we're finding is who can speak more to them than one of their peers.
Epic.
But you know, the story that you're recalling, I certainly recall that was the first one we had, and the full story is this woman came on stage and she was shaking, and I was afraid she was going to pass out, or you know, and then you know, I went over and I said, "Are you okay?" And it was this halting. I never thought this could happen for me, and she was just trembling. And then, you know, I'm trying to get her to relax a little bit. And I said, "Is there anyone here for you?" And that's when she said, my mother, my daughter, and my sister. And I said, "Show me where they are." And she pointed, and that's when she pointed up. And that's when you heard this little tiny voice from the upper balcony. "That's my mama." And then it was, oh my God, there was so many tears coming down. But I think what it is this people, right? I think one of the things I also said, online is just a modality, but what was the key is engagement. And when our people get in the room and have these chances to engage, it just means more to them. And then your second point, David, about the importance of being a role model. We've done one of the things with Ethan Braden and his team is we've done a lot of focus group interviews where we've been speaking to students, alums, employers of our students, what matters. And this importance of being a role model comes up over and over. And that the parents talk about, yeah, I sit at the table every night and do my homework with my son or my daughter, and you know, those kind of things. But I just think that is the key. One of the other things we're working on, I'm gonna take a tangent here, is we're working really hard to find more ways for our online students to engage. And we had a really good teaching model to start with. And by that, I mean, the classes are relatively small. The faculty who work with us work hard to make sure that the students are engaged in their course. Hopefully, if you disappeared and they didn't see you for a couple of weeks, they're going to go, "Joe, you know, is everything okay?" And I mean, it's this inquiry. It's an inquiry of concern. And if there's something we need to address to make sure that we can keep you on track, let's try to do that. We just launched this in January. There's a tool out there called Get Set, and Get Set is a peer-to-peer. It's for the students. And you can take a bunch of demographic characteristics of the students, and then they can self-select in. But let's say that I'm a single parent, Navy veteran, studying cybersecurity, and I'm a redhead, or, you know, I mean, however many you want. But the notion is you're going to find a relatively small set, and it's a place where they can go and ask, "How do you deal with Dr. Lin?" Because I'm finding that I don't know what he's looking for in class, right? That would be a good one. Or has anyone had to deal with a situation like this? I've encountered, because I've been thinking of this. What are the things that students need to be successful as a working adult? And I'm going to come to two. Number one, back to this question of being a role model. If you're going to come to school as a working adult, you really have to be committed. And while it's important to be a role model, if you aren't in it, if you're not bought into it, it's an employee benefit. No, the employee is you, and you have to see the value. The second thing, and here's where a lot of our first gen students in particular, I think, struggle. You've got to be willing to ask for help, because we have all kinds of help available. Where do we fall down? Sometimes you're not aware that it's there. So it's this culturally, we have to say, you know, we expect you to ask for help. If we're not asking enough, you know, I think if we deal with these two things, we're going to continue to see improvements in the results and outcomes for our students.
True.
Dave, you got another one? You want me to?
Yeah, I have a little follow-up. So Dr. Dooley, my dissertation explored how executive leaders in higher education show up to different audiences in different ways. And you've had the kind of unique experience of having executive roles in the traditional kind of brick and mortar institution with Purdue University. And then you transitioned quite quickly to being the chancellor of an online university. So I'm wondering what kind of formal or informal training or experience helped you to feel ready for the public-facing dimension of this chancellor role for an online university? And how is that different from your in-person brick and mortar experience?
Yeah, of course, other than coming on this podcast.
Yeah, I think, Joel launched me, that's for
Yeah,
sure. But no, I think, David, in many ways, I'm a pretty simple thinker. And I'll say, when I was at West Lafayette and the role I worked, like the vice provost for undergrad education, we called it teaching and learning, but in essence, it was, what does it mean to have a Purdue degree? And that was West Lafayette. And I had two goals the entire time I was there. I wanted more students to get their degree, but I wanted to be able to answer that question: what does it mean to have the degree? Right? You can always increase your graduation rates by dropping your expectations. We weren't going to do that. I mean, if anything, we probably ramped up the expectations and things like that. Over the entire time in the provost's office there, those goals never changed. Now, guess what? I'm over here. I'm a pretty simplistic guy, as I said. It's the same goals. What does it mean to have a degree from Purdue Global, right? And what are we doing to prepare the individuals that we're... Now, we do it differently because it's a very different population of students. So I think, I guess leadership, the difference is I have a national stage now, and when I was in my prior role, I was really on campus. My role was to lead the education and the students on the West Lafayette campus. My students are all 50 states. My faculty are all 50 states. Most of my meetings now are looking into a screen. I no longer watch TV at night because I can't stand to look at screens anymore after I get home. But I think, David, it comes down to you can be an effective leader if you believe in what you're doing. And I think if the people who work with you and work alongside you and for you and all the different dimensions, if they believe that I believe what I'm doing, it's easier for them. And I've got to be good about explaining what the expectations are. I'm going to say, as a new president or a new chancellor, and it gets addressed to a certain start. Part of the challenge of coming into these roles is you're immediately put under a microscope. You have about, and you go to FDR, he had 100 days, right? Let me figure this thing. Now you got about 100 minutes.
Nailed it.
And people are saying, what's your priority? Well, where is this? And to a certain extent, they're trying to understand, do you have a mission? Do you have a direction? Do you know where you're trying to take the institution? But the other thing they're trying to do is they're trying to see, and do I fit into that? It does come back to individuals at all time. And so that's the challenge. I guess the last thing I'll say, you have to love what you're doing. And because these jobs, people say, well, you work so hard. No, I think hard work is somebody trying to figure out an emergency financial aid question for somebody who, their computer broke and they don't have money. That's a hard job, right? I think a hard job is, think of some of these are really hard jobs. My job, it's a different type of hard, right? And so I think maybe if anything motivates me as I look, the old adage, it takes a village, it certainly takes a village.
You know that the world of higher education is experiencing evolutions and revolutions. You want to be part of the progress. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education with insights from more than 100 college and university presidents, will show you how. Get your copy of Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education now on Amazon right away. We think you're going to love it. It's
amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your
Attention.
It's time for us to solve the puzzle of success in higher education. Get your ticket to Ellucian Live for industry insights, powerful connections, and innovative solutions. From March 26th through 29th, join peers from around the world in New Orleans to unlock the possibility and drive student and institutional success. Learn more and register at elive.ellucian.com. Frank, I wanted to ask follow up on that because you hit on something that I think about all these episodes that I do. And there was a president, I think he was the Rutgers president. And he says, we asked a similar question about, different audiences and how you present yourself in leadership. And he said, to be quite honest, I live every day. It's something to the effect of, as I live every day as myself, and I'm ready to walk away at any time. If I can't be myself in this role, then it's not a role I want. If you look at where you are in this huge, Purdue University Global's footprint is global. You're in front of audiences of all kind, external journalists, your podcast hosts, newspapers. You've got students of every type. If there's a type of student that's not at Purdue Global, I'd be surprised, right? You probably have students of every type. You've got your faculty. You've got faculty at Purdue University. You've got even extra. It's like extra stakeholders that maybe if Purdue University didn't have a Purdue University that it came from, you'd have less. So you have even more. Do you come in every day and just go, you know what? This is it. This is me. This is what you're going to get. And everything else kind of falls to the side around you because people are getting used to you? Or are you putting on different hats all the time to where mentally it's just hard to keep up?
That's a fabulous question. I really,
I only ask fabulous questions, Frank, just so
well, no, I've heard a couple clunkers. I've listened to a lot of
Who
these.
invited you back?
Yeah. But we won't repeat those, right? And he'll edit this out anyway. But I think, Joe, I try to be, I'm going to call it steady and consistent in my work. I also try to today would have been my mother's 100th birthday if she was still alive. She died 6 years ago. So she's 94 when she died.
Happy birthday, Mom.
Yeah. And she was an educator. Okay. But she taught me more than anything. My daughters, I have two daughters, and what they gave me as a present about a little over a year ago is a subscription to this thing. It's called Storyworth. You get a question every week, and you're supposed to reflect on the questions. And then, when it's all done, they print a book, and you can put pictures in and things. And the questions are a lot about where did you come from? What do you believe in? What's important to you? Who are great role models for you? What's your favorite book? And, these kinds of things.
That's pretty cool.
And it's really, really fun. But I think as I look myself, one of the things I've always, I serve at the pleasure. All right. And I remind myself of that, not every day, but I certainly understand that. Now, what does that mean? The pleasure means that I'm doing my job. And the pleasure means that I have a full understanding of what my board expects and what the president of Purdue expects. So that, but to me, that the pleasure also means that I have a faculty who believes in the direction we're going. I have a provost and a leadership team who are with me 100%. If I have any success, probably my greatest success, Joe, and the biggest difference in the university today versus when we talked in 2020, I have a much wider set of people working for me in leadership roles. And I'll just give you Ethan Braden as Chief Marketing Officer. That would be one. I also have a person by the name of Nathan Utz who runs my B2B relationships. He is Ethan's peer in terms of excellence in what we do. You go back to when I took over, we did not have a director of student success. And I look at the population of students, and one of the things that happened in the middle of 2021, so I'd been here about a year, I talk about that memo. What do I need? I need for the risk population of students I have, we need to be doing more around student success. I go to the board. We launched a set of strategic moves in June of 2021. Top of the list, more in student success. And Dr. Karen McGregor, we hired her. She started in May of 21 or 22, I'm sorry. And we're doing a lot to help our students. We didn't have anyone working in diversity, equity, inclusion. So July of last year, Dr. Tiffany Townsend started it. But DEI, some places have added the word belonging. Some people add the word justice. I saw one that's called Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, or JEDI, which I thought was kind of cute. But to me, I try to think of what that means and where it means right now. There's a lot that goes to me from organizational culture. And it is a culture, this word belongingness. And are you building a place where everyone, regardless of their background, regardless of, whereas before we were really siloed as a society and class. We're just trying to say, if you believe in what we're trying to do, there's a place at the table for you and we need your help. So those are some of the things we're doing.
Amazing.
It's like I've interviewed you before, I swear, because you keep giving me, I'm looking, I've got this list of questions in my mind and you're like, I love it because it's like natural segues and you talk about serving all and serving students. And one thing that typically will come up when you're an online institution and you're scaling or you're at scale is graduation rates. Now the 4-year, the 6-year graduation rates. Oh gosh. Recently I had a colleague of mine, won't name the school, as I was talking about what I'm doing at Lindenwood to help grow our online footprint. And that person says to me, do you really want to have the same graduation rates as those big online universities? And I said, well, yes, because the easiest thing in the world to do is control a graduation rate. I'll only admit one student. They get a 1600 on the SAT. Yep. Make sure they're from some kind of privileged background with enough economic means. Maybe even a legacy student, and I'm going to just put that one in. I'm going to wrap all these services around him or her, and they're going to graduate 100%. It's easy. Maybe I'll scale that to 100 and I'll graduate 99. I'm going to take zero risk, no risk, and I can control that graduation rate easy as pie. I'm going to clamp that front end to create great back end. When you start to release those clamps on a front end and you say, we are going to take a risk on this student who we feel has potential, knowing that person is probably going to affect your graduation rates because they're an in and out student, right? There's a lot of stop outs. They have family concerns. Perhaps they're from a lower economic background, but why shouldn't they have access to higher education? And then I'm gonna have this outcome that's available for everyone to see, and you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about when you look at that. When you question that and you say, oh, those are bad graduation rates. No, I'm going to wrap all of my attention around keeping that student moving along. And they're moving along at their pace. They ain't going to listen to me. They're going to listen to what I think the pace should be. They're going to say, I had a car accident. I need to stop out. I'm having another baby. I need to stop out. So we need to stay with them. And eventually those students will get through. So, I mean, what do you say about that? Because that's a very common argument in and around higher education is that, well, graduation rates are not so great for online students. And it's like, but you got to take you got to be willing to help.
Joe, I mean, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but it's a really important question. And I think what we need to do is we need to address it head on. Okay. And the working adult population is a different population of students with a much different set of needs and a much different set of experiences than what a Syracuse is. My next door neighbor's daughter is a grad of Syracuse or Purdue. I mean, Purdue West Lafayette is an amazing place to go to undergrad. And there's lots of places for the residential, typical 18 to 24. And I hope they all do the best that they can, right? But there's a whole nother most of my students went to college somewhere before. It just
probably
didn't work out.
longer ago.
Yeah, it might have been a decade ago. Let me give a couple examples that kind of address that observation. Number one, I think that's where the idea of certificates, or maybe that's all an individual's going to need. And I think so, but now we get to metrics, and one of the things that scares me in the world, college scorecard and things like that are so metric driven that I think they overlook the characteristics of a program. So my grad rate, I do think it needs to be stronger. Okay. There's a couple things that we're doing that I'm going to call our policy changes. And I think when I came in, I looked at some of the policies in the catalog we had, and I started asking, the faculty and my registrar and other people, why do we do it this way? And, I mean, institutions, well, we've always done, sometimes, and it takes the new guy in the room to be able to ask this why question. And when you start to ask the why question, here's a couple reasons why some of my students won't graduate, which kind of make you go, well, why would we do that? Working adults started, and we find that it's not uncommon that they might have credit from 5 different places, right? Moreover, most of them are going to need federal aid to go to school. They're working poor. And what we've found is every year we're finding some get really close to the finish line, and guess what? They've burned through all their federal aid. Now, think about this from a national perspective. Here's somebody who has been swimming upstream, right? Maybe one class at a time, a term off, they're back, and now they're this close to being done, and now we say, oh, sorry, you can't do it. Because, I mean, there's a person who's given you every piece of evidence that they can do it. So we're looking to finding, starting programs that have been modeled at places like Georgia State for completion grants. That would be one. I keep looking for what are we doing as the institution. We talk about life gets in the way. For God's sakes, let's not make the institution get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those is I go back to the faculty reaching out to you. We've changed the way that it used to be is you got kind of like an auto email. You have not been in class in 17 days. And if you're not going to be active in the class in the next 48 hours, you will be withdrawn from the class. Okay. Well, that feels pretty good. As opposed to now, instead of an auto, it's coming from your faculty member who's looking at what the students in their class are doing and are saying, hey, David, is everything okay? Very different emotion, and it's how we start to affect these things. So I fully agree with you that the metrics are part of what we have to deal with. I have a somewhat of a unique problem. Arizona Global has this problem as well. Most of the stats that get reported out, I mean, right now, college scorecard is for somebody who started school in 2014, 2015. The policy changes that I've started putting into effect were enacted in the year 2021, which means that it really was sometime in 2022 when they started to roll out. Those metrics move. It's a lag that's just phenomenal. And I mean, how do I keep this story? So what we're going to do is I'm going to be as public as I can be. I'm going to be as open as it's going to be, and we're building out dashboards and things to say, we understand the legacy story. We understand the data that you're looking at. Here is what we are doing to address those concerns. And here are early measures on where we are with success. And I can give one. First term persistence. If you went back to 2020 and before, it was only about 60% of the students who even went to term 2. We have that number now up into the mid 70s. Okay?
Amazing.
And moreover, for some of them who choose not to go forward, it's actually a good decision on their part. Mm-hmm. Whether it's they don't have the time, they don't have the motivation, they don't have whatever it is, because that means that they're not going to end up with a whole bunch of debt and not have anything at the end. So I've heard the thing fail fast. That would be a version of that. But there's much more of this belief. Let's make sure those who have the desire, the goal, let's help them go forward. And that's where we continue to put our effort.
I love it. And David, it's your turn, but I do also want to give one quick example, and it's one of my favorites to give when you're talking about adult students and grad rates. I have personally had students come to me in institutions that I've worked at and say, look, my employer is giving me X. I'm only going to take X classes, and then I am going to wait until the next year when I get refunded. And you go, okay, I know the student's basically going to come and drop and come and drop it. Do I want to help them?
Is that a question?
And if the answer is no, then maybe we're in the wrong business.
Yeah. Oh, without.
Did you guys freeze? Did I freeze?
You did freeze. Yeah.
Without question, I
Yeah.
froze. All right. Well, because it was such a salient point I was making. I froze myself. I told my internet to freeze the point. But the point is that you're taking a risk on a student who you know is going to have an in and out because that they're telling you that. So you either help them or you don't.
But
David, over to you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Frank.
I'm sorry, David. There does become one of these national policy questions. And when you look at the structure of Title IV is a model built for that 18-year-old who's going to be a full-time student.
Yep.
You know, some of the stats that it's trying to report on, it's only reporting the stats for your first-time full-time beginners in a fall. I hardly have any of those. So, and then you look at the stat and the way it reports out, it says NA. And now it looks like I'm hiding something or like, and I'm not hiding, it's just that I don't have that stat. So how do we make those adjustments to reflect institutions that look like us and, you know, Western Governors and SNU and some of my peer institutions? Let's paint the picture to the world of what we're doing as a sector.
David, sorry, I'm monopolizing.
No, this is great. I mean, really enjoying this conversation. So, Chancellor, we're talking about some of these regulatory structures that were really designed for brick and mortar institutions. But I'd like to engage you in a what if scenario.
Okay.
If you could add to your skill set a superhero ability that would allow you to solve a nagging problem, let's say in non-residential or online higher education institutions, what would that superpower be and how would it help you solve the problem?
I think the superpower, and I'm going to go back, it is a policy aspect of some of my students should have stop outs. And, you know, if you got loans and you stop out, what happens with your loan? It's due. And you don't have any money to start with. So I really do think we ought to be thinking in a broader time frame about if let's say, David, you're my student and you're not working double shifts for the next 3 months, it's a seasonal, we know you're going to be working double shifts, you're not going to have time to school, but you fully intend to come back in, let's say, 3 months from now. Now, if you don't show up in 3 months, fine, your loan should become due, but is there some way we can say, no, this is a planned stoppage, it's not somebody who walked away from the institution, and can we get the feds to understand from a financial aid perspective how important it is? You know, one of the other superpower thing that I worry about, you know, a lot of the COVID relief money, the HERF money is going away. And how important has that been to a lot of our lower income students? Over 50% of my students are Pell. And if we're going to move this country, we've got to help the students at the lowest income spectrum have the opportunity to get the education they need to contribute.
True.
David, follow up on that one. That's pretty good superpower. Policy superpower. I think I want that one too.
Okay, so I have a related what if scenario. Let's say you can, Dr. Dooley, take a peek into the future, borrow some piece of technology from the future for a day, bring it into the present, and it would help you solve some kind of communication blockage with one of your constituent groups to just help smooth over some obstacles. What would that technology be, you think, and what problem would it help you solve?
I'm not sure how your mind works, but I really love it, right?
Me too, by the way.
and you're not seeing this immediate answer from me. Part of my problem is it might be my ability, if this is the power in a way, it would be cloning, because there's so many places I need to be, so many audiences I need to address. So if every morning I could wake up and, there's 7 mirrors in my bathroom or something, and boom, 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 and you're going to go talk to students, and you're going to talk to alum, and you're going to go talk. And then at the end of the day, you come back together and say, what do you have? That might be the power that I would need. That time is always the challenge. And so, and you never feel that you give enough attention. So I think that's the thing. I know that email is, in my mind, a curse. We're also available, and then the questions come in. So how do you make sure that you're getting to all of them?
Is it fair to say that then all 7 of you would be able to go have a cocktail at the end of the day?
Cheers!
Or would it just be you have to come together first before you have that glass of wine? Anyway, that's.
I think you'd probably have to come together, because if I had 7 glasses of wine, I would not get to 7. So I mean, I think 1 would be much safer, right?
Cheers!
Well, I love that. We how we end these episodes, Chancellor Dooley. We like to ask the same 2 questions of every guest. You already answered one, but you get a second chance. Smart move, by the way.
Yeah.
Tell us what we did not talk about. By the way, this is just not enough time with you. We need to do a 2-hour one, because you're not busy anyway, and we can get you for 2 hours. But what should we say about Purdue Global, that hasn't been said? Anything you want to say? Anywhere you're speaking? Any new program coming out? Any new initiatives? If you want to reiterate what's going on with your marketing and branding, you can feel free to do that. And of course, we'd like to know what the future of higher education holds.
Yeah, fabulous question, and I mean, your question's not a surprise to me. So, I look to the let me go to the future one, then I'll circle back to what's coming. I guess now it's back to this superpower. I find that I never get to the future, and I actually have somebody working to me who is studying futuring. I mean, she's working on her dissertation. Her name's Maricel Lawrence, so she's studying for her dissertation at Arizona State. And Maricel comes to me all the time talking about things I should be contemplating. And I guess instead of a futurist, I call myself a presentist, because I always want to bring it to today, and what can I do about that today? But I think, Joe, there's really one thing that, this mind that I have, this is where I'm thinking. So I've always loved history. I'm an economist by training, but history has fascinated me since I was a boy. And if you look at the different stages of the Industrial Revolution, there's a lot to learn from there. And there is, if you want to say, every time we seem to move to a new stage in the Industrial Revolution, there's new demands of higher education. And I'll take, so the first one is the Age of Power, which is around 1800, 1820s. Then you get to the mid 1800s, it was the age of mechanization. You go a few years after that, and guess what we had? The land grants, who were trying to work in the mechanical arts and agriculture and military tactics, right? You go, the next age was the age of computers in the early 1960s, or age of computing. And all of a sudden we had regional colleges, we had community colleges, because there was a new need for the workforce to be able. Now, the most recent age is the Internet of Things. And you tell me the last time you ran into a blue collar profession that they weren't walking around with an iPad or some. Everything now is time. And the work that, when you go back to when I was a boy, a blue collar job was a good job. You could provide for your family. You had a middle income lifestyle. Your kids could go to college and all these kind of things. And it was respected, right? It was hard, but it was respected and people valued it. Today, I can't be a blue collar worker if I don't have a degree. And I think where the future, and where the future is coming to present, I think what society is saying is all these jobs, these 40 million adults with some college, no degree, They got to get the degree or at least a certificate that they're digital literate. They have to have this ability. And I have to bring that forward as fast as I possibly can. The new thing, we have taken a program, a prior learning assessment, which a lot of places like myself have, but I'm trying to put it on steroids. And by that, we're now calling it coupler, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to couple the experience, the life experience, the work experience of a working adult to an educational outcome. So I have more people, and if you were to come to me as a prospective student, I'll give you a couple ways that we're doing it. Last time I was on a show, I talked about how we work with military, and I think that's in the book. Yep. But we're doing right now, we're going to employers, and we're saying, can we see your job descriptions, and can we see the training programs you have? And an employer might say, well, here would be training to be a store manager, da 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 da. We walk through it. Our coupler program then has linkages to faculty in a relevant field. We say, look at these training materials. Can we give credit for it? And it's like a transfer credit evaluation process for other types of training. We've done it with the Google certs. We've done it with other types of prior learning. And my goal is, I think when I came in, we did award a lot of transfer credit, but relatively, I'm guessing about 10% of it was for prior learning. We're up to 25% of it is for prior learning, and I hope to get that to, let's say, 40%. Now, we're doing a lot of work to make sure that that learning means you're going to be successful when you move forward. And so it's, auditing almost, are these people, but, one of the companies that we did this with said, well, no one's asked us this before. And I went to, well, what do you use this training? Well, we give people promotions. All right, that seems to be a validation that you think this is pretty good work. Mm-hmm. So, but we have this office that is coming at this work with such passion and looking for it and trying to help others identify, you might have this in your workplace that maybe we can unpack it for you. And it's being really well received. And I think that's going to help us and help our students go forward.
I like your style, dude.
Yeah.
I have to tell you guys, what a good podcast this was. Appreciate it. Lots of great conversation. I know it couldn't happen without this person. He's Dr. and I want to stress that, Dr. David Lind, and you deserve every minute of those accolades. Dr. Lind, he's Director of International Programs for the College of Professional Studies at Syracuse. David, did you have a good time today being co-host? Third time now, I got to get you that mug, man. I'm telling you.
I loved it. Thank you.
We love having you here. And ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, I will tell you simply, he is one of the best people to know in higher education, one of the best leaders we have in higher education. It's an honor to speak with him, and I hope you'll follow him. Find him on social. He is one of a kind. He's Chancellor Dr. Frank Dooley, Purdue University Global. Frank, did you have a good EdUp experience today? And welcome back for a second time. Did you have fun?
Oh, it's fabulous, Joe. I look forward to the third time. Might get that mug too.
Yeah, well, you got a co-host. You have an open invitation.
Okay,
my friend. You can co-host with me anytime you want.
All right.
Anytime. We'll find some fun people for you to co-host with.
That would be great. That would be great.
And I'd like to just say to Dr. Lind as we close out this episode, that other podcast that you talked about, I don't know who it was. We're going to remain nameless, but we don't bring up the competition. No, that's fine.
I'm so sorry.
It's fine. We love you anyway.
You might have to edit that out, right? So
no, we don't. We don't.
Right. Yeah, I know here. It's a great shoot.
We leave it all in. We bear our. There's this saying called "open the kimono." I think is the funniest thing in the world, and you don't say that around like a group of people when you're in a meeting, but if you say it amongst friends, it's fun because we just let it expose here of the messiness of a podcast. That's what you get here at the EdUp Experience, made better by Dr. David Lind, Dr. Frank Dooley. That's the only reason we got through it. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for some
amazing
news. It's time to work together to solve the puzzle of success in higher education. Ellucian Live returns to New Orleans from March 26th through 29th to help you unlock possibility for your institution. And yes, the EdUp Experience will be there recording live. Industry leaders from all across the world are converging to discover new insights, game-changing solutions, and powerful connections, all with the goal of addressing higher ed's greatest opportunities and biggest challenges. You do not want to miss Ellucian Live. Learn more and secure your seat today at elive.ellucian.com. It will be
Amazing.
It's time to
level up.
The beginning of a new era in higher education begins with you. Order your copy of Commencement, The Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education by Kate Colbert, Dr. Joseph Lustio, with contributions by Elvin Freitas. It's higher education's must-read book of 2022. Discover how you can seize the moment to change higher education forever. Commencement, The Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education, now available on Amazon. For bulk orders, contact Kate, Joe, or Elvin